I would like to take a few minutes to talk about our hero and our leader, St. Joseph. I just think it's totally appropriate that we are under his patronage. And if I may, I would say that St. Joseph, to me, is a model of a man of hope. And we'll just look at this very quickly. A couple things we know about him, and ironically, we don't know too much about him. Scripture doesn't give us a lot of details, but we can find some things. For an example, we know that he was a devout Jew. We know that. And this is very important because we'll see, particularly in the infancy narratives, that Mary and Joseph did everything according to Jewish law and custom. So Jesus was brought up in a faithful, Orthodox, traditional Jewish family. That's very, very, very important that he embraced his own people and he met them there and then brought them with the Gentiles to a whole new place. We also know that Joseph was actually royalty. He was of the house of David, which literally puts him in line of the kingship. So when you look at the Gospels and they give us those long genealogies, they're not only the genealogy of Jesus, they're the genealogy of Joseph. And so Joseph actually was royalty. He actually was. But even though he was that, Herod was on the throne in Jerusalem. The Davidic throne, you might say, was set aside. So Joseph lived actually in poverty. We know this because when it came time to bring a sacrifice of a lamb, they brought 2 turtle doves because they couldn't afford a lamb. So this king, this man in line for the throne, actually is living a very low life, very poor. And we could say, that's not fair, that's not just. That's right, guys. We said this the other day. Life isn't fair. Life is not just. And Joseph, who had a legal claim to the throne of David, lived instead a very quiet and obscure life. Great humility, a great poverty there. We know that he and his wife and his son were refugees living for a fair amount of time in Egypt, in a foreign land. Another thing about Joseph is we always call him the carpenter. I think the Greek word is tekton. And what it actually means is builder, it means craftsman, it means artisan. That could be with wood, metal, stone, many other things. But it's interesting because these craftsmen, these artisans, were often mentioned in the Old Testament as the men who helped build the temple. So here we have the house of David building the first temple, and now a member of the house of David still being a builder, building the new temple, building up Jesus, but also helping us realize that there's a connection between King David and Joseph and Jesus. There's a nobility, there's a dignity here. Now, one of the interesting things about Joseph is that people often say, it's interesting that he never said anything. And I'm using him today as a model of a messenger of hope. So how can you have a messenger of hope who never says anything? Doesn't quite fit the model, does it? I'm telling all of you to say everything, but Joseph doesn't say anything. But maybe he does. Maybe he does. In the first chapters of Luke, you recall that John the Baptist was going to be circumcised and given his name. And you remember that his father, Zechariah, could not speak at this moment. So they asked his mother, Elizabeth, what shall we call the child? Thinking that she was going to say, we'll call him Zechariah, after his father. Elizabeth says, let's call him John. And this really kind of upset everybody. Well, nobody in your family's name is John. So they gave a tablet to Zechariah and says, what do you think we should call him? And Zechariah writes down the name. His name is John. And then, of course, his ears are open, his mouth is open. He begins this beautiful proclamation of who his son will be. Okay, about a chapter over, Jesus is about to be circumcised. And in the Jewish law and Jewish culture, the person who gives the name is the father. So when they said to Joseph and Mary, what name do we give this child? Joseph gave the name. Brothers, here's what that means. While we often think that Joseph didn't say anything in Scripture, we have scriptural evidence that Joseph did speak. He spoke one word, and that word is Jesus. The one word this man of hope spoke in the entire Bible, Jesus. And that word means God saves. In a certain sense, brothers, did he need to say any other words? Isn't that the one word we all want to speak? Isn't that the one promise we want to offer everyone? God saves. We'll do it with more words, and we'll expand, and we'll draw more things out. The point is, Joseph got it right. If he could speak one word, the one word that says everything, Jesus. When I first heard this, I literally was moved to tears. And my prayer now is, no matter what I say, no matter what conversations I have, no matter how many words I use, may I always speak one word: Jesus. God saves. That's the message of hope. That's it. That's the word. You'll find other ways to say it. You'll find other ways to build on it, but that's the word. Joseph spoke. Joseph believed. Joseph was obedient. And once again, here we go again, Joseph took action. It says when he woke from his dream, he took Mary into his home as his wife. When he was warned in another dream that Herod was trying to kill the child, he put his wife on a donkey who was holding a baby, and they took off for Egypt in the night. He left everything behind. He had to set up his business again in Egypt as a refugee, probably making the poorest of wages. They got news that Herod was dead. They came back. He settled them in a new place. Here's something I often wonder. We know Joseph was a righteous and a virtuous man. We know he believed in the teaching and the law of God. And Joseph knew who this child was. He knew it. Maybe you would not have this problem. If I was Joseph, and there is the Messiah sleeping quietly, his mother next to him, and I just woke up from a dream that said, "Get him out of here. They're going to try to kill him." Isn't there something that would say, wait a minute, he's the Messiah. Why don't you do something about this? Why don't you just kill Herod right now? Why don't you destroy our enemies? This is the Son of God. Why do we have to run? Why do we have to go to Egypt? Why is this all so hard? If this is the Son of God, if this is the great one, if this is the Messiah, if this is the one who will bring hope, why is this so hard? I don't know if you've ever felt like that, man. Have you ever tried to start a new project and you feel like you're pushing a boulder up a hill? Have you ever had to work in your parish? Again, I think of what our beloved priests live with every day. Why is this so hard? I'm trying to raise my kids in the faith. They're a bunch of idiots. Why is this so hard? I'm doing right at work. I'm trying to be righteous and faithful. Why is this so hard? We said the other day that one of the qualities of a man of hope, we're not ignorant of the challenges, but neither are we grumblers nor complainers. We're men of stability. Not because of the circumstances, but because of the hope. So while all this to me seems very unfair, very unjust, Joseph doesn't sit in a cave in Bethlehem saying, "Why is this happening to me? This is so unfair." He responds to the situation in hope, gentlemen. He responds to the situation in hope. Not in the circumstances, but in hope. People say to me, do you really think Joseph was a man of hope? Joseph held hope in his arms. He held hope in his arms. He protected hope. He fed hope. He fought for hope. Yeah, he's a man of hope. He believed, he was obedient, he was faithful, He was humble. He spoke the word, and he was willing to act. You know, the scriptures tell us, and the teaching in the church is that when Christ died on the cross, his first stop, you might say, was Sheol, the place of the dead. All those souls, all those good souls who could not enter heaven because it was closed, Christ came to the place of the dead to bring them out of darkness into heaven. I was just thinking, what do you think it was like for Jesus and Joseph to meet in Sheol? What do you think it was like when Christ came to bring everybody out? And you know what? I almost hear the voice of that little boy trapped in the earthquake. As Christ is bringing all of the faithful out of Sheol, I see Joseph turn and say, "See, I told you my daddy would come." God clawed through the concrete of sin and death and led Joseph and all of his classmates out of the debris. Brothers, you can trust God. You can trust God for your own life. You can trust God for your family. You can trust God for your country. You can even trust God with this crazy, broken, messed up world. Because in Jesus, our daddy has come. That hope is already being realized in our lives. As we've heard each other's testimonies over the last couple of days, I see men who have been brought out from concrete. I see men who have walked out into the storm in the night and stood against the wall. I see men rescued from the Antarctic and desperate places. I see men who have seen the first glimmers of hope. And so we end where we begin. I saw a new heaven and a new earth. The old heaven, the old earth have passed away. I saw a city come down, the New Jerusalem, bright and shining. I saw people I could not count or number. God was in their midst. They will always be with God, and God will always be with them. And then a voice said, "Behold, I make all things new." No more death, no more crying, no more suffering, no more pain. I make all things new. I am the Alpha and the Omega. Write down these words, because these words are true. Brothers, I exhort you to stir up the gift of hope that already is within you. Guard it, feed it, protect it, fight for it. Because we are going to need every man in this church tonight to be a messenger of hope. There's something like, 8 billion people in the world, there's about 100 of us. God can do anything. Have hope.